Hello, it's Scott Newcomb with Zenvi AI, and welcome to the Systems Are Sexy podcast. Today's guest is someone who has spent more than 2 decades inside commercial real estate, operating at an institutional level, structuring deals, advising clients, and navigating complex markets. But what makes this conversation interesting is not just experience, it's reinvention. Yoav Sarraf is the founder of Creation Partners, a platform he built after stepping back and rethinking what kind of deals, relationships, and legacy he actually wanted to create. So instead of chasing scale for the sake of scale, he's focused on intentional growth, disciplined underwriting, and building something aligned with who he is today. So welcome to the show. How are we?
Thank God, Scott. Great to be here. I appreciate you having me. My first podcast, so it feels a little surreal hearing all that about myself. Big fan of your show and love the name, as you know, of course. So great to be here.
Yeah, a good ego boost is not a bad thing. So I wanted to start kind of maybe at the beginning, which is always find interesting. You spent about 20 years in commercial real estate. What moment made you realize it was time to build Creation and Partners instead of kind of staying in the institutional lane?
Question. It's funny. I never really intended necessarily to get into commercial real estate. It's not something that I quite fell into. I grew up around it. My parents were immigrants, and my father, despite having a very educated background in the architectural and construction world, he had a handyman business and did property management. And my mother worked both in banking, but also got her real estate broker's license and was active in it. But growing up around it, I didn't really see the sexier, to borrow your term, the sexier side of real estate. It was mostly, seeing them work hard and struggle. And it was only later, especially in high school and college, because of a side job I had just to make extra money, where the owners invested in commercial real estate on the side, that I really got exposed to the alluring side. So I think there was a part of me that always wanted that more personal feel and did projects that resonated with me. But a lot of it just, going out into the world and, trying to build a name and career and support a family and young children and so on. I think that led to, I guess you could call it the institutional path. Although even with my old partners with whom I still work and I'm very close with, it didn't start on an institutional level necessarily. It really kind of was built from the ground up and it started going in that direction. I think for me, it was a number of things, in that the focus was value add multifamily for the most part, both in Los Angeles and other major markets. And I grew up in apartments for most of my life. And for some reason, whatever it might be, it just didn't. Multifamily, even though I was active in it and I was good at it in a lot of ways from both the investment and intermediary standpoint, it didn't necessarily sing to me. Whereas street retail, commercial corridors, placemaking, curating tenancy, and envisioning projects and new opportunities, that's really what kind of resonated with me most. And I think, not to give you too verbose of an answer, but I think it was a number of factors. My father of blessed memory was very ill with leukemia at the time. My children, my older two, were pretty young at that point. And I think there were just a number of things happened, maybe an inner calling, if you will, that just told me that it was time, as difficult as and painful as it might have been, to break off to some degree from people in a company that were really like my family and that I had a hand in help building. It just felt time for something new and to reinvent, I suppose, to borrow your term as well.
Well, you'd also mentioned earlier about when we spoke about blowing it up to start fresh. And I was wondering, is that more about creative fulfillment, control, or is it something deeper?
Great question. Not so much control, but I think it's, really controlling your own destiny, and trying to maybe to listen to your inner voice. This is a terrible analogy because I'm sure there's all kinds of great analogs from like the business world, but I remember the band U2, after they had a lot of success with one of my favorite albums as a kid, The Joshua Tree, I think they felt that they had stalled out and they wanted to go kind of blow it up again and dream it up all over again. And I remember reading that when I was younger, and that really resonated with me because you're already established, you already have a name and everything. Why mess up a good thing? But I think that idea was kind of alluring, but it was more creative destruction, I suppose, in that I wanted to kind of chart a new path, explore different opportunities that resonated with me. And there's no straight line, and oftentimes there's no straight line in real estate. If you trace back people's careers, some of their defining deals and moments and so on, it's kind of funny how it came about. So I think Again, even though I had a family to support and, children that relied on me, I didn't have the luxury of taking big risks or anything. Something was just telling me to kind of follow a path, and certainly not easy. A lot of ups and downs and left and right. But in retrospect, looking back, I wouldn't change it for the world, really.
That's awesome. So, people that aren't familiar with you guys, how would you describe Creation Partners and the problem you're trying to solve?
Great question. I think the best way we could describe it is as a LA-based commercial real estate investment and advisory and management platform. Generally, what we focus on is Main Street properties, properties in commercial corridors, both established and emerging. And we participate as investors, oftentimes with the right partners. We participate as advisors and intermediaries on the brokerage side, oftentimes with long-term relationships that we've worked with for many, many years and feel like family, and asset management to some degree as well, where we really, at the risk of sounding trite, we treat these assets as though they're our own, and we look to position them and the portfolios and the owners for the best potential outcomes.
Okay. Okay. So, when you're looking at retail or mixed use opportunities now, are there maybe 2 to 3 non negotiables you need to have before you move forward?
Question. And there's nothing written in stone necessarily, although there are certain standards that we look to abide by. For one, we've got to believe it, we've got to feel it, and we got to feel good about it. One thing that I've really noticed is that you can't fake it in this business. You can't really fake it for a long time in any business. And if you're not genuinely excited and feel that you could add value, then it's just not worth taking. And oftentimes I'm very candid with people. I love talking to people about deals or issues or the problems they might be having. And if it's something that doesn't fit our kind of unique specific lane, we're always happy to connect with whoever in our network or orbit might be able to help achieve the best success. I think, we've got to feel it. It's got to resonate with us. We've got to believe in it. We have to know that we could do something meaningful with it. Um, and you have to trust your gut. It's funny, there are some times where I've looked at buildings on a street where something on the north side of the street will just, feel like the sun is shining and like God is trying to point the way. And I'll look on the south side of the street and I don't feel it. And I know that sounds funny from an investment standpoint, but I think one thing that I feel like I've learned from a lot of mentors and a lot of people that I admire in the business is that you have to trust your gut. I listened to a podcast actually recently with Rick Caruso, and even though I'm bitterly disappointed that he's not running for mayor of Los Angeles again, but who could blame him given the life that he has? He talked about how he's got a tremendously talented team of individuals that work with him, but he doesn't really look at the analysis. If he can't kind of justify a deal on the back of the envelope, then it's not worth doing to them. And I feel very much the same way. I want to be able to explain the deals that we want to do to a child where, it makes sense, really. I think oftentimes if you try to get into overly complicated analyses and talk yourself into a deal or try to do a deal for the sake of a deal, you oftentimes find yourself in trouble. So you have to have a high degree of conviction, both in the possibilities and both in your ability to carry them out. And you've got to feel it and believe, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to ask you about operations and in running lean, because I think you had mentioned about building systems from the ground up instead of over automating too early. Are there core systems that you feel like are essential for a lean investment firm to scale responsibly? Because I feel like a lot of people think they run it lean, but they don't really know what that means. So I'm just wondering, how do you view that?
Well, I've been on so many different sides of it where I've run kind of tremendously lean and, with my old partners where, a massive enterprise with over 100 employees and managing a lot of people, with everyone being essential. That's the funny thing. It really depends on like, what you're doing, the scope of what you're doing, where you could still have dozens of people and still be running lean in a sense. I think um, trying to build the systems from the ground up where I was starting or when I was starting anew, the idea was I really wanted to evaluate everything on a case by case basis, not, overcomplicate things and really almost treat things from like a pen and paper standpoint to start with, and then map it out in my mind, take it to the computer, feed it through AI. But the reason why initially the title of your podcast kind of resonated with me is that I've never been a great systems or operations person. I always kind of, be it my young ego or whatever, I felt like I could hold a lot of things in my head. As I get older, I feel like that's an impossibility. But um, I think systems are sexy when you enjoy what you're doing. And I think that's a good bellwether for whether you are actually enjoying what you're doing and you're kind of operating, to borrow the real estate phrase that I often like to use, that you're operating kind of at your highest and best use. Because if you're not excited about systemizing things, about organizing things, about trying to achieve the best outcome from like a systems and technological standpoint, and it feels like a chore to you, then you probably shouldn't be doing that in the first place. So that's why, for someone who always, I don't want to say hated systems, but wasn't the first to run to create them, I really kind of enjoy doing it and enjoy doing it from the ground up. And I think a little part of it is making sure that systems are in place where it's not completely reliant on me, where with a lean team, we could have real standards and procedures in place, and things that are meaningful, that aren't just for the sake of doing it. I want to be able to explain systems where whoever on our team or outside of it is working on it, they understand kind of the reasoning and the rationale behind certain systems and what we do. And I feel like people respond, even at the operator level, people respond a lot better when it's thought out and it's just not for the sake of having another system or having another tool in your tech platform or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I totally agree. I can relate to you because I didn't always feel like I needed to have the systems, and sometimes I felt like I need to hire somebody to help me do those kind of things because it's some days just like it doesn't excite me. I don't know if I really want to spend time
Yeah.
creating this today, but once it's in place, it makes such a big difference in the business.
Totally. I mean, systems aren't sexy throughout. There's a whole process of where you're agonizing over how you're going to form and create something. But especially being involved a little bit in a tech platform that I've been working on with a dear friend and partner as well, I think that process of discovery and trial and error, while it could be frustrating, you want to bang your head against the wall, it's the process of invention. Edison didn't, invent the light bulb instantaneously. So it's the same kind of idea, but ultimately you hope that the outcome is, just as illuminating in a sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to switch more to technology and AI now. I know that's obviously you mentioned technology platform. It's part of your thinking now. Where has it meaningfully improved your workflow, or maybe where are you still cautious about it?
Well, I always feel like I'm not doing enough
Right.
because I'll go on LinkedIn or X and see people talking about how Claude Cowork is changing their life. And, I feel like a moron for not utilizing it more. But, in the same way, when it comes to kind of building systems, I find AI to be amazing and awe-inspiring and scary at the same time, just like any kind of revolutionary new technology. There's still days where I will write something into Chat GPT or, whatever platform, and just be blown away. It's like, the first time you might have seen an iPhone and, zoomed into it for the first time. I mean, it's still pretty awe-inspiring, and it's proliferating and improving, on a daily basis. I think it's really interesting in that regard. And in terms of how we've been implementing it, it's been several fold. For one, just the basic, my wife jokes that I always used to write like ChatGPT and I would act as ChatGPT for her and others around us in terms of editing. So it's good for me to have a sounding board that I can rely on to kind of, more than anything, organize my thoughts. I think for me, especially a lot of people in the retail real estate world, you're scatterbrained. You've got a million different things that are going on and you're thinking about at the same time. So I think in terms of having clarity of thought and focus, AI can be a really, really amazing tool. You want to avoid, and we've all been guilty of it, but AI slop, so to speak, where, that's kind of the art, where everybody knows that everybody's using it, but you want to make it a part of your voice and who you are. And, it's very comical to me when you start getting emails from people who always wrote at, a subpar level, and all of a sudden they sound, like a literary genius. That's, that's one of the fun, that's been one of the fun outgrowths of AI. But when it comes to everything, when it comes to not just kind of forming thoughts and writing, but research, analysis, envisioning, imagining, even when it came to our website that we're just about to launch, we really relied on AI in a lot of ways, both from a content and aesthetic standpoint, not to be a substitute because we really wanted it to feel personal and handcrafted, but to really enhance what we do. And, I think not to drone on and pontificate about AI, but, it's obviously something that people talk about a lot these days. And the way I see it, I remember the famous Steve Jobs line that computer was like a bicycle for your mind. I think AI is maybe like a motorcycle or like a supersonic jet for your mind in a lot of ways. That it's an amazing instrument, and while there's fears of it replacing workers and people in a lot of ways, which are justified, and we see it a lot happening in like the labor force to some extent, I really see it as an instrument that can help bring about good and help people achieve at levels that they might have never previously envisioned.
Right, right. Have you thought about it as your business? If there was one task or one part of your business you could automate, what would it be?
Outreach. I love the personal touch and outreach, but it could be a little overwhelming. I have a list about a mile long of people I want to reach out to, and be it, through phone call, email, text message, carrier pigeon. It's hard to do and keep up with in a way that feels personal and doesn't just feel like a mailing list. So that's definitely something that I want to do more, where it helps kind of act as an extension of us and not only help us stay in meaningful and personal contact with people, but to help make sure that we're at top of mind for people that we want to be connected to, and vice versa. Because there's so many times where you'll be working on a project, or you'll see a deal that have happened and you think, oh, I should have connected with
Yeah.
so and so on it. So I think to the extent that we could kind of capture that funnel, so to speak, get through newsletters and outreach and things that really feels meaningful and resonant, that just doesn't feel like outreach for the sake of outreach, but and my kind of my bellwether, for lack of a better word for it, is I like to see, when it comes to email communications or whatever it might be, I like to see, or I like to create rather, the kind of things that I would like to see myself. So I think a lot of people are utilizing that to, with AI to their benefit. And, our hope and goal is that we continue moving in that direction as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's say 5 years from now, what does success look like for creation partners?
Great question. It's one of those things where I think you know it, where you see it, but I really want for us to have worked on projects that we really feel proud of, that we could stand behind, that can stand the test of time. A lot of what our thinking and thesis is when it comes to the investment side is long-term investments. And on the advisory and management side, it's long-term relationships and long-term outcomes. So 5 years from now, I really want to be able to look back, hopefully, on this podcast and be proud of what we've been able to build, both in terms of a base of investments that we partnered with and invested in, with people that we care about and who believe in us as well and want to grow with us together, and to have been able to meaningfully help people, private owners, institutions, nonprofits, which, we're fortunate to work with quite a bit, and know that we've been able to achieve things. So for me, um, I've never been great with the numbers, and I've never been, as funny as it sounds, I've never been motivated by money. I want to be successful so that I can enjoy my family and friends and loved ones, so that my family and children can benefit in the future. But for me, oftentimes, no joke, when it's not about AUM necessarily, or certain metrics, which are certainly nice, and you need to kind of keep track of those to know what direction you're heading in. But the most gratifying things for me when I drive through the streets of LA, for example, is looking at projects that I might have worked on, even in the most, minor of ways, and know that I had a hand in it. And it could be anything from a retail property to a school to a housing development or whatever it is. And they kind of blend into the background sometimes, but sometimes you'll be driving, you'll look up and you'll be like, wow, I had a hand in that, like we put in every tenant over there. We helped sell that property multiple times, or, this school exists now, whereas it didn't before as a result of our efforts. People live here or work here where they didn't before. And that's pretty cool. So hopefully I can maybe have an out of town visitor or something like that 5 years from now and drive around and be able to point to a bunch of different cool things and feel proud of what we've been able to build.
That's awesome. Yeah, having pride and just kind of like an entrepreneur mindset of help you being a part of something and giving back is really important. Well, great. It was great talking to you. I was going to ask you if people want to learn more about you personally or your company, what's the best way to do that?
You don't want to learn about me personally. There's nothing too interesting there. But if you want to learn about our company, our website is www creation dash or hyphen partners.com. The one without a dash was unfortunately taken. We're on LinkedIn and Instagram as well. We're terrible about self promotion, but trying to get better at it. But please don't hesitate to drop us a line at hello@creationpartners.com or call us at 310 Creation, a phone number that we were luckily able to get in the LA area. So we love connecting with people. So please don't hesitate to reach out.
Awesome. Thanks so much for the time today.
Thank you, Scott. This was a lot of fun.